The massive amphitheater buzzed with excited chatter as students from across the galaxy filled the curved rows of seats. HFY stood at the center podium, his 6 crystalline arms adjusting the holographic display controls with practiced ease. His transparent blue skin shifted colors slightly as he prepared for today's lecture, something that always happened when the Altarian professor felt nervous about dangerous topics. Marcus Chun sat in the middle section, one of only 3 humans attending the prestigious Galactic University. He pulled out his digital notepad and looked around at his fellow students. To his left sat a Vraxian with fur that changed colors based on mood, currently a calm purple. Behind him, a Keltorian student's tentacles tapped rhythmically against their desk, creating soft musical notes. The diversity never stopped amazing Marcus, even after 6 months at the university. Welcome, students, to Advanced Xenobiology. HFY's voice echoed through the chamber's excellent acoustics. Today we explore one of the most dangerous topics in our curriculum, the biological horrors of death worlds. Several students shifted nervously. The term death world made everyone uncomfortable except the humans. Marcus had learned that most species came from what humans would consider paradise planets, stable climates, gentle weather, and very few dangerous life forms. Our focus today centers on a particular Class 12 death world known as Earth. The professor's skin turned a deeper shade of blue, indicating serious concern. This planet harbors life forms so deadly that most council species require full environmental protection just to visit its surface safely. A Zelthari student raised one of her 4 arms. Professor, why do we study such dangerous places? Surely we should avoid them completely. HFY nodded approvingly at the question. Excellent point, Student Velmara. We study death worlds because understanding their biology helps us protect ourselves. Knowledge of these biological weapons allows us to develop better defenses. Marcus frowned slightly. Biological weapons? He had grown up on Earth and never thought of anything there as particularly weaponized. Sure, some animals and plants can hurt you, but calling them weapons seemed extreme. Today, I will show you preserved samples of Earth's most lethal biological compounds. HFY activated a containment field around a collection of sealed vials. The energy barrier hummed softly, and warning lights flashed around its perimeter. These represent the absolute pinnacle of biological lethality discovered anywhere in known space. The students leaned forward with morbid curiosity. Even through the heavy containment, several species' natural danger-sensing abilities triggered. A few Kavani students' feathers stood on end, while the Malaxian students' skin patches turned bright yellow, their equivalent of humans going pale with fear. First, we have botulinum toxin. HFY highlighted a small vial containing what looked like clear water. This substance comes from bacteria found naturally on Earth. A single gram of pure botulinum toxin could kill approximately 14 million of my people. For context, that amount would fit on the tip of a standard stylus. Gasps echoed throughout the amphitheater. Several students instinctively moved back in their seats, despite the multiple layers of protection between them and the samples. Next, we examine ricin, extracted from earth plants called castor beans. Another vial glowed under the display lights. This compound attacks cellular function at the molecular level. Our medical simulations suggest that ricin exposure causes one of the most painful deaths possible for carbon-based life forms. Atharnian students' breathing apparatus began cycling faster, their species equivalent of hyperventilation. Professor, they asked through their translator, how did any life form survive on a planet with such deadly substances occurring naturally? An excellent question. HFY replied. Earth life forms somehow adapted alongside these toxins over millions of years. However, We believe even Earth's native species remain highly vulnerable to pure concentrations." Marcus tilted his head, confused by this statement. His grandmother worked with botulinum in her research lab back on Earth. She had told him stories about handling various biological samples during her career as a microbiologist. The safety protocols seemed normal for laboratory work, not the extreme precautions being described here. This third sample contains tetrodotoxin from Earth sea creatures. HFY continued his presentation. This neurotoxin blocks nerve signals, causing paralysis and death within minutes. Our toxicology databases rank it among the top 5 deadliest substances known to galactic science. More nervous shifting rippled through the audience. The Altarian professor's skin continued deepening to darker blues as he discussed each sample. His genuine fear was obvious, despite his scientific training and the multiple safety systems protecting everyone. Finally, we have samples from Earth fungi that produce aflatoxins. The HFY gestured toward the last set of vials. These compounds cause liver failure and have been classified as Class 1 biological warfare agents by the Galactic Peace Council. The chamber fell silent, except for the humming of life support systems and the soft whir of the containment field generators. Students stared at the display with mixtures of fascination and terror. To them, these samples represented pure death contained only by advanced technology. Marcus studied the readouts displayed beside each vial. The concentration levels seemed strange to him. Everything showed dilution ratios that looked extremely high. The botulinum sample read as 1 part per billion. Ricin showed similar numbers. Even the tetrodotoxin was diluted to what seemed like tiny amounts. As you can see, Dr. HFY continued, these samples required extreme dilution before we could safely transport them to our facility. Even at these reduced concentrations, exposure would prove fatal to most galactic species. The original undiluted compounds remain too dangerous for any known containment system. That statement made Marcus even more confused. His grandmother had mentioned working with pure samples regularly. Many Earth laboratories handled these substances without the elaborate precautions being described. The safety measures seemed appropriate, but not the extreme terror everyone was displaying. The HFY began discussing the theoretical applications of studying such deadly compounds. By understanding how these toxins function, we hope to develop better medical treatments and protective equipment. This research could save countless lives across the galaxy. Marcus continued staring at the display numbers. Something felt wrong about the professor's explanations. The dilution levels seemed unnecessarily extreme for substances his grandmother's colleagues worked with routinely. Either Earth safety standards were completely inadequate, or something else was happening here. The lecture continued with detailed molecular diagrams and theoretical discussions about toxin mechanisms. Other students took extensive notes, clearly fascinated by the deadly biology being presented. Marcus found himself more puzzled than frightened by what he was learning. As the class period neared its end, Dr. HFY prepared to deactivate the display. Remember, students, this represents why death worlds remain quarantined from general galactic travel. The biological hazards are simply too extreme for most species to survive. Marcus raised his hand, his confusion finally overwhelming his usual classroom politeness. Marcus Chen raised his hand higher, hoping to catch Dr. HFY's attention before the class ended. The Altarian professor noticed the gesture and nodded toward the human student. Yes, Student Chan? Do you have a question about today's material? Professor, I was looking at the concentration readings on your display, Marcus began, pointing toward the containment field. Why are these samples so heavily diluted? The numbers show concentrations around 1 part per billion for most of them. The amphitheater fell completely silent. Not the normal quiet of students listening to a question, but the absolute silence that comes when something shocking happens. HFY's 6 arms froze in mid-motion, and his crystalline skin began shifting rapidly between different shades of blue. Heavily diluted? The professor's voice came out as barely more than a whisper. His universal translator seemed to struggle with processing the words, making small clicking sounds as it worked. "Student Chan, could you please repeat your question?" Marcus looked around the classroom, wondering why everyone seemed so shocked. "I asked why the samples are diluted so much. These concentration levels look really low compared to what my grandmother works with in her laboratory back on Earth." Avraxan students' fur turned bright red, the color of extreme alarm for their species. Several Keltorians began making high-pitched whistling sounds that indicated panic. The Zelthari student who had asked earlier questions now had all 4 of her arms pressed against her chest in a protective gesture. HFY's sin had turned almost completely white, which Marcus had learned meant absolute terror for Altarians. "Student Chen," the professor said slowly, "these concentrations represent the maximum exposure levels any known species can survive. These are not diluted samples. They represent the absolute limits of what our containment systems can safely handle." "But that doesn't make sense," Marcus replied, genuinely confused. "Botulinum toxin is used in medical treatments on Earth. My aunt gets injections of it for muscle spasms. And my grandmother handles pure ricin samples in her research all the time. She just wears normal lab safety equipment." The classroom erupted in chaos. Students began talking rapidly in dozens of different languages. The Kovani students' feathers were standing straight up, making them look twice their normal size. 3 Malaxian students had turned completely yellow and were backing away from Marcus as if he carried some terrible disease. "Impossible!" shouted a Tharnian student. "Pure botulinum toxin could kill billions. No life form could survive direct exposure." "Your grandmother handles pure ricin?" asked another student, a Delvarian whose scales had turned dark purple with shock. "That substance could contaminate entire continents." HFY raised all 6 arms for silence. His skin continued shifting colors rapidly, cycling through various shades of blue, white, and now hints of green. "Class dismissed. Everyone except Student Chung, please leave immediately. I need emergency consultation with the Xenobiology department." Students fled the amphitheater as if escaping a natural disaster. Many species had natural flight responses when faced with extreme danger, and Marcus was apparently triggering all of them. Within minutes, the vast chamber sat empty except for Marcus and the increasingly agitated professor. "Student Chen," Dr. Zephahai said carefully, "I need you to explain exactly what you meant about your grandmother's laboratory work. Please be very specific about the substances she handles and the safety precautions she uses." Marcus shrugged. "Well, Grandma Chun is a microbiologist at Shanghai University. She studies bacterial toxins for medical research. She works with pure botulinum cultures to develop new treatments. The lab has normal safety protocols: gloves, fume hoods, proper disposal methods. Nothing too extreme." Each word seemed to make Dr. Zephahai more distressed. The professor began pacing back and forth, his crystalline feet clicking against the floor. "Normal safety protocols?" he repeated. "For pure botulinum cultures? Sure. It's dangerous if you're careless, but it's not like working with nuclear material or anything," Marcus explained. "My cousin works in a cosmetic clinic that uses botulinum injections. They call it Botox. Thousands of people get treatments every day." Zephahai stopped pacing abruptly. "Botox? You use botulinum toxin for cosmetic purposes? Voluntarily?" "Yeah, it relaxes facial muscles to reduce wrinkles," Marcus said. "It's one of the most common cosmetic procedures on Earth." My mom got it done last year. The Altarian professor sat down heavily in the nearest chair. His skin had settled into a pale gray color that Marcus had never seen before. Student Chen, do you understand what you're telling me? You're describing casual, routine exposure to substances that could exterminate entire star systems. That seems like an exaggeration, Marcus replied. I mean, botulinum is toxic. The people work with it safely all the time. You just need proper training and equipment. The HFY activated his emergency communicator. This is Professor HFY requesting immediate consultation from Department Head Veltar and the Galactic Health Services. I have a Code 7 biological anomaly in Amphitheater 12. Within minutes, the chamber filled with new arrivals. Dr. Veltar, a massive Kovani with silver feathers, strode in followed by a team of medical specialists from various species. They all wore full environmental protection suits, which struck Marcus as excessive for a simple conversation. What exactly is the nature of this emergency? Dr. Veltar demanded, his translator giving his words a sharp, authoritative tone. Student Chen has just informed me that humans routinely handle pure concentrations of Class 5 biological weapons. Dr. HFY explained. He claims his family members work with undiluted botulinum toxin using only basic laboratory safety equipment. The medical team exchanged alarmed glances. A Trelawney doctor stepped forward, her tentacles writhing nervously. That's impossible. Pure botulinum exposure would cause immediate death for any carbon-based life form. Not for humans, apparently, Marcus said. Look, I think there might be some misunderstanding here. These substances are dangerous on Earth, but they're not weapons of mass destruction. My grandmother has been working with them for 30 years. Dr. Veltar activated a scanner and began taking readings from Marcus. Student Chen, would you be willing to undergo some medical tests? We need to understand how human biology differs from our projections. Sure, I guess, Marcus agreed. But I really think you're overreacting. Lots of Earth species have natural resistance to various toxins. Honey badgers can survive snake venom that would kill most animals. Koalas eat eucalyptus leaves that are toxic to everything else. This isn't that unusual. The medical team began setting up testing equipment while discussing the situation in worried tones. Marcus caught fragments of their conversation about impossible biological immunity and fundamental errors in toxicity models. Student Chen, Dr. HFY asked quietly, what other substances from our display does your species work with regularly? Marcus thought for a moment. Well, ricin is used in cancer research. Tetrodotoxin gets studied for nerve disorder treatments. The aflatoxin research helps develop food safety protocols. He paused. Wait, are you telling me that other species can't handle any of these substances at all? The medical team stopped their preparations and stared at him. Dr. Veltar's feathers had turned completely white. Student Chen, these substances represent the most lethal biological agents known to galactic science. A single molecule of pure botulinum toxin could theoretically kill a Corvani. Marcus began to understand why everyone seemed so terrified. If humans really had unusual resistance to substances that other species considered impossibly deadly, then his innocent question had just revealed something that could change everything about how the galaxy viewed Earth and its inhabitants. Within 3 hours of Marcus's innocent question, the university's main medical facility had transformed into something resembling a military operation. Dr. Veltar coordinated teams of xenobiologists, medical specialists, and safety experts from across the galaxy. Emergency protocols designed for handling Class 5. Biological threats were now focused entirely on one confused human student. Marcus sat in the center of a heavily shielded testing chamber, watching technicians in full environmental suits prepare equipment through thick, transparent barriers. This really seems like overkill, he said into the communication system. I told you, these substances aren't that dangerous to humans. Student Chun, what you describe as not that dangerous could potentially kill every sapient being on 17 different council worlds, replied Dr. Kethmel, a Vraxian toxicology expert whose fur remained bright orange with stress. We must proceed with extreme caution. The first test involved exposure to botulinum toxin at concentrations 1 million times lower than what Marcus claimed his grandmother handled routinely. Even at this minimal level, the medical team expected to see cellular damage within minutes. 3 different species monitored Marcus's vital signs while automated systems tracked everything from brain activity to individual cell metabolism. Beginning exposure sequence, announced Dr. Veltar. A tiny amount of diluted toxin was introduced into Marcus's air supply, so small that galactic measurement systems barely registered its presence. The medical team watched their instruments with intense concentration. 10 minutes passed. Nothing happened. Marcus's vital signs remained completely normal. His cellular activity showed no signs of distress. If anything, he looked bored. This is impossible, whispered Dr. Yeleth, a Keltorian biochemist whose tentacles had turned pale with shock. Even at these concentrations, we should see immediate metabolic disruption. Maybe your equipment is malfunctioning? Marcus suggested. I feel fine. Actually, I'm getting kind of hungry. Is there somewhere I can get lunch after this? The medical team exchanged panicked glances. Dr. Veltar made rapid notes while coordinating with his colleagues. Increase concentration by factor of 10, he ordered. The new exposure level would prove instantly fatal to any known galactic species. For Marcus, it was still thousands of times weaker than what humans encountered in normal laboratory conditions. The result was exactly the same, no effect whatsoever. Increase by factor of 100, Dr. Veltar commanded, his voice tight with disbelief. Dr. Kethmel's fur had now shifted to patterns of orange and red that indicated severe distress. Sir, at these levels, the contamination risk alone could threaten the entire facility. Are you certain we should continue? The containment systems are holding, Dr. Veltar replied grimly. We need to understand what we're dealing with. They increased the concentration again and again. By the end of the first day, Marcus was breathing air containing botulinum toxin at levels that could theoretically exterminate entire planets. He spent the time reading homework assignments and asking when the cafeteria would send his dinner. Run the ricin exposure tests, Dr. Veltar ordered the next morning. His silver feathers had developed stress patterns that Marcus had learned indicated serious health concerns for Corvani. The ricin tests produced identical results. Marcus showed no adverse effects to concentrations that should have dissolved his cellular structure within seconds. When they moved to direct skin contact with diluted samples, he complained only that the testing gel felt slightly sticky. This rewrites everything we know about biological toxicity, Dr. Yeleth said during the team's emergency consultation. Human resistance levels exceed our most optimistic projections by factors we cannot even calculate. HFY, who had barely slept since the crisis began, studied the data with growing amazement. We need to contact Earth's medical authorities immediately. If humans routinely work with pure concentrations of these substances, we need to understand their safety protocols. The communication link with Shanghai University took 6 hours to establish, due to bureaucratic procedures for interspecies scientific collaboration. When Dr. Liu Chen, Marcus's grandmother, appeared on the holographic display, she looked confused by the elaborate setup. Dr. Chun, Dr. Veltar began formally. We understand you work with botulinum toxin in your research. Could you describe your standard safety protocols? Certainly, Dr. Chen replied. We use Class 2 biosafety cabinets, standard laboratory gloves, and proper ventilation systems. Nothing unusual for bacterial culture work. We've been using these procedures for decades. The Galactic medical team stared at her in horrified fascination. Dr. Chun, Dr. Kethmol asked carefully, "What concentrations of pure botulinum toxin do you typically handle?" "Pure cultures? Usually around 10 to the 8th colony-forming units per milliliter," Dr. Chun answered. "Standard research concentrations." "Why do you ask?" Valtar began calculating the numbers. His feathers turned completely white as he realized what those concentrations meant. "Dr. Chun, the levels you just described would be sufficient to eliminate all life on approximately 47 inhabited worlds." Dr. Chun laughed. "That seems rather dramatic. It's certainly dangerous if mishandled, but we train our students in proper techniques. My granddaughter helped in the lab during high school. She learned standard protocols and never had any problems." "Your granddaughter worked directly with pure botulinum cultures as a teenager?" Dr. Yillith's tentacles had begun vibrating rapidly, a Keltorian stress response. "Without environmental protection suits?" "Environmental suits for bacterial work? That would be massive overkill," Dr. Chen replied. "Basic lab safety equipment is perfectly adequate. We follow standard university guidelines for biological research." The conversation continued for 2 hours. Every detail Dr. Chun provided made the Galactic medical team more amazed and terrified. Humans routinely worked with substances that galactic science considered absolutely unsurvivable. Their basic safety protocols would be considered inadequate protection against the most harmless galactic bacteria. "We need to test exposure to pure, undiluted samples," Dr. Veltar announced after ending the communication link. The statement caused immediate alarm throughout the medical facility. "Sir, pure concentrations pose contamination risks that could threaten the entire star system," protested Dr. Kethmol. "Our containment systems were never designed for such extreme protocols." "Then we'll need to construct new ones," Dr. Veltar replied grimly. "If humans can safely handle pure concentrations, we need to understand how that's possible." The construction of ultra-high security containment systems took 5 days. The resulting facility resembled something designed for containing antimatter rather than biological samples. Multiple redundant containment fields, automated sterilization systems, and emergency evacuation protocols created layers of protection that had never been necessary before. Marcus waited patiently while teams of engineers worked around the clock. He spent time studying for other classes and video calling his family back on Earth. His casual descriptions of the testing procedures left his parents confused but supportive. "So they're really excited about your resistance to some kind of poison?" his mother asked during one call. "That's nice, dear. Make sure you're eating properly." When the new containment facility came online, Dr. Veltar made final preparations for testing with pure, undiluted biological agents. "Student Chun, I want to emphasize that what we're about to attempt has never been tried with any sapient species. Even the theoretical possibility of survival seems impossible." "I understand," Marcus replied. "But honestly, if my grandmother can handle this stuff with regular lab gloves, I think I'll be okay." The first exposure to pure botulinum toxin produced the same result as all previous tests: absolutely nothing. Marcus remained completely unaffected by concentrations that could eliminate civilizations. The medical team watched in stunned silence as everything they thought they knew about biological toxicity proved completely wrong. News of the human biological immunity spread through the Galactic Council networks like wildfire. Within 48 hours of Marcus's successful exposure to pure toxin samples, emergency sessions convened across dozens of government and scientific institutions. The implications were staggering enough to reshape fundamental assumptions about galactic civilization. Ambassador Thelanara of the Altarian Republic received the initial briefing during her morning security update. Her crystalline skin shifted through rapid color changes as she read Dr. Veltar's preliminary report. "Are you telling me that humans are immune to biological weapons that could destroy entire worlds?" she asked her aide. "According to preliminary testing, yes," replied the aide, a young Kurvani whose feathers remained distinctly pale with stress. "The medical team has exposed the human student to pure concentrations of substances we classify as planet killer class biological agents. He shows no adverse effects whatsoever." Ambassador Thelanara immediately contacted the Galactic Health Council. Within hours, Director Morton of Health Services was reviewing footage of Marcus, casually handling pure ricin samples while discussing his weekend plans. The massive Trelawney's tentacles writhed with agitation as he watched. "This changes everything," Director Morton announced to his Emergency Advisory Board. "If humans possess natural immunity to Class 5 biological threats, we need to completely reevaluate planetary quarantine protocols." The first major implication became apparent when the Colonial Expansion Committee reviewed their restricted planet listings. Over 3,000 worlds remained off-limits to galactic settlement due to biological hazards. If humans could safely inhabit these environments, the economic and strategic implications were enormous. "Look at the Kepler 442 system," said Committee Chair Velosti, highlighting a star chart during the emergency session. "We've classified it as unsuitable for colonization due to naturally occurring aflatoxin compounds in the soil. But if humans can survive those conditions, the agricultural potential alone would be extraordinary," added Dr. Yimtal, the committee's environmental specialist. "These restricted worlds often have excellent climates and resources. We simply couldn't access them safely before." Meanwhile, at Galactic University, HFY found himself at the center of the scientific community's most significant paradigm shift in centuries. His crystalline skin had settled into a steady gold hue, the Altarian expression of profound excitement mixed with bewilderment. "Marcus," he said, during one of their now daily consultation sessions, "do you understand what your species represents? You're not just immune to biological weapons, you're immune to substances that evolve naturally on worlds we consider completely uninhabitable." Marcus, who had become surprisingly comfortable with his new status as a biological anomaly, shrugged casually. "I guess Earth is just more dangerous than most places. We evolved alongside all this stuff, so it makes sense we develop resistance." "More dangerous?" HFY repeated. "Marcus, your planet produces substances that we use to sanitize contaminated starships. Things that grow naturally in Earth soil could be weaponized to eliminate entire star systems." The military implications hadn't escaped the attention of Fleet Command. Admiral Crickstell of the Galactic Defense Force convened classified briefings to discuss how human biological immunity might affect interstellar security considerations. If humans are naturally resistant to biological warfare agents, they could potentially serve in environments that would kill our other personnel instantly, pointed out Colonel Yarbeth during the strategy session. Imagine human crews operating in contaminated zones that would require automated systems for other species. "But that same immunity makes them potentially dangerous," replied Intelligence Director Felmer. "If they can survive exposure to biological weapons, what's to stop them from using such weapons against other species?" The debate raged for days. Some officials viewed humans as valuable allies with unique capabilities. Others worried about the security implications of a species immune to their most dangerous weapons. Educational institutions across the galaxy began emergency reviews of their xenobiology curricula. Professor Nimdar at the Centauri Institute of Advanced Sciences found herself completely rewriting her course on Death World biology. "We've been teaching our students that death worlds are uninhabitable hellscapes," she explained to her faculty committee. "But humans prove that intelligent life can not only survive in such environments, they can thrive and develop advanced civilizations." The economic implications became apparent when the Galactic Trade Consortium realized that humans could potentially handle cargo and materials that required expensive automated systems for other species. Shipping costs for biological research materials, medical supplies, and certain industrial processes could be dramatically reduced with human personnel. Human crews could transport medical isotopes, biological research samples, and hazardous materials that currently require specialized unmanned vessels, calculated Trade Director Vexhall during the consortium's emergency economic assessment. The cost savings could reach trillions of credits annually. Cultural reactions varied dramatically across different species. The peaceful Malaxians viewed human immunity as a fascinating example of evolutionary adaptation. Their philosophers spent days discussing how survival pressures could produce such extraordinary biological resilience. The humans demonstrate that intelligence and biological toughness can co-evolve beautifully, wrote philosopher Yilmash in his widely circulated essay on human evolution. Their success proves that harsh environments can forge wisdom rather than merely breeding aggression. Other species reacted with more concern. The Zelthrans, whose highly regulated society emphasized safety and predictability, found human casual attitudes toward biological dangers deeply disturbing. They handle substances that could kill billions, and they joke about it during lunch breaks, observed Zeltran cultural analyst Morvith. Their entire approach to risk assessment seems fundamentally different from rational species. Medical research institutions began planning unprecedented collaboration projects. The possibility of human researchers working directly with dangerous pathogens that required expensive containment for other species opened entirely new avenues of investigation. Human medical personnel could study diseases that we can only examine through remote systems, explained Dr. Kilfar, head of the Galactic Medical Research Institute. They could work directly with samples that would require Level 5 containment facilities for the rest of us. The most significant institutional response came from the Galactic Council itself. Emergency sessions addressed whether humanity's biological immunity required changes to interspecies protocols, trade agreements, and even the fundamental classification systems used for planetary habitability. "We may need to create entirely new categories for human habitable worlds," announced Council Speaker Thonville during a public session. "Our current system assumes biological vulnerabilities that simply don't apply to human physiology." Dr. Veltar continued coordinating research efforts, while dealing with constant requests for information from government agencies, military organizations, research institutions, and private companies. His silver feathers had developed permanent stress patterns from managing the overwhelming response to their discoveries. "Marcus," he said during one of their evening discussions, "your simple question about diluted samples has triggered the largest reassessment of galactic biological science in recorded history. Every major institution is reconsidering fundamental assumptions because of what we've learned." Marcus had grown used to being treated like a living miracle, but the scope of institutional response still amazed him. "I really just wanted to understand why the concentration levels looked weird. I had no idea it would cause all this excitement." "The excitement is just beginning," Dr. Veltar replied. "Wait until you see what happens when the Council makes their official announcement about reclassifying human biological capabilities. This is going to change everything." 6 months after Marcus Chen's innocent question changed everything, the HFY stood before the largest scientific assembly in galactic history. Representatives from every major species filled the massive auditorium on the neutral world of Nexus Prime. His crystalline skin glowed with steady gold patterns of excitement and pride as he prepared to deliver the most significant biological research presentation in recorded galactic history. Esteemed colleagues, Dr. HFY began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's advanced acoustics. Today, I present findings that fundamentally change our understanding of biological adaptation and survival. The title of my research is Redefining Lethality, a study in human biological resilience and its implications for galactic civilization. Marcus sat in the front row, now serving as Dr. HFY's official research assistant. His casual human clothing contrasted sharply with the formal scientific attire worn by most attendees. Behind him sat his proud grandmother, Dr. Liu Cheng, who had traveled from Earth specifically for this presentation. She still seemed amused by all the excitement her routine laboratory work had generated. For centuries, we have classified certain biological compounds as absolutely lethal to all known life forms. Dr. HFY continued. Today's presentation will demonstrate that these classifications require complete revision based on human biological capabilities. The professor activated the holographic display, showing the same containment field setup that had started everything. But now, instead of treating the samples as weapons of mass destruction, the presentation framed them as examples of remarkable evolutionary adaptation. 6 months ago, a human student asked why our toxin samples were heavily diluted. Dr. HFY gestured toward Marcus. That simple question led to the most comprehensive biological immunity study ever conducted. The results have revolutionized our understanding of adaptive evolution. Marcus stood and walked to the demonstration area, carrying a sealed container that would have caused panic in the same room just months earlier. Now, the assembled scientists watched with fascination rather than terror as he handled pure biological agents that could eliminate entire civilizations. Human biological resistance operates through multiple evolutionary mechanisms. Dr. HFY explained as Marcus casually demonstrated handling pure botulinum toxin. Enhanced enzymatic detoxification, modified cellular receptors, and redundant metabolic pathways combine to provide immunity levels we previously thought impossible. The audience included military leaders, government officials, and representatives from major corporations alongside the scientific community. General Morkith of the Unified Defense Command leaned forward intently as the presentation continued. The practical applications of human biological immunity extend far beyond academic interest, Dr. HFY announced. We now have documented cases of human personnel safely working in environments that would require full automation for other species. Admiral Thunder nodded approvingly. Over the past months, human volunteers had successfully operated in contaminated zones that had been abandoned by galactic civilization for decades. Their natural immunity allowed for cleanup and recovery operations that were previously impossible. Medical research has benefited tremendously from direct human involvement, continued Dr. HFY. Research projects that required expensive remote-controlled systems can now proceed with human personnel working directly with dangerous pathogens. The Dr. Yulmara from the Galactic Medical Institute stood to address the assembly. Human researchers have accelerated our understanding of biological threats by approximately 300%. Their ability to work directly with dangerous samples has revolutionized our research capabilities. The presentation moved to discussion of planetary colonization. Over 40 previously restricted worlds were now open for human settlement. The economic implications had already triggered massive infrastructure investments as companies prepared to exploit resources that had been inaccessible for centuries. The Kepler 442 system, previously classified as uninhabitable due to soil contamination, now hosts a thriving human agricultural colony, Dr. HFY announced. Their farming operations are producing food that other species can safely consume after minimal processing. Marcus took the opportunity to address the assembly directly. When I first asked about the diluted samples, I was just confused about laboratory procedures, he said, with characteristic human casual confidence. I never imagined it would lead to all this. The question represents the best of scientific inquiry, Dr. HFY replied. Student Chun challenged assumptions that seemed obvious, and in doing so, opened entirely new fields of research. Ambassador Velanara of the Galactic Council rose to speak. Based on these research findings, the Council has officially reclassified humanity from tolerated death world species to apex biological adapters. This new classification recognizes their unique capabilities and their value as partners in galactic civilization. The applause that followed came from dozens of different species. Kalvani feathers rustled with approval. Keltorian tentacles created musical appreciation tones. Even typically reserved Altarian delegates showed excitement through rapidly shifting skin colors. The collaborative potential extends to exploration of previously forbidden regions, announced Explorer Captain Crixville. Human crews are already surveying star systems that we abandoned due to biological contamination. Their immunity allows us to reclaim entire sectors of space. HFY moved to his concluding remarks. Humans don't just survive on death worlds, they thrive because of their harsh origins. What we initially perceived as a biological vulnerability has proven to be their greatest strength. Marcus grinned as he held up a vial of pure tetrodotoxin that could theoretically eliminate multiple star systems populations. My species has an old saying, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger." We just took it more literally than most civilizations. The assembly erupted in appreciation. The formal scientific presentations gave way to enthusiastic discussions about future collaboration projects. Research teams formed spontaneously as species that had never worked together discovered new possibilities for partnership. Da Yu Chun approached the demonstration area, still somewhat amazed by the galactic response to her routine work. "Marcus," she said quietly, "when you called to tell me you were causing excitement at university, I thought you meant getting good grades." "Well, technically, I am getting good grades," Marcus replied. "Plus, I'm helping revolutionize galactic science. Not bad for a sophomore biology major." 3 major pharmaceutical companies had already approached human institutions about joint research ventures. The possibility of human personnel working directly with dangerous compounds promised to accelerate drug development by decades. Clinical trials that required expensive automated systems could now proceed with human researchers directly involved. "The terraforming applications alone will keep us busy for centuries," explained Dr. Morvex from the Planetary Engineering Consortium. "Humans can survive on worlds where biological contamination made terraforming impossible. They can literally live in environments that kill our terraforming equipment." The presentation concluded with announcements of new educational exchange programs. Dozens of universities across the galaxy were establishing programs specifically designed to take advantage of human biological capabilities. Marcus found himself recruited by research institutions he had never heard of. The most important outcome isn't the practical applications, Dr. HFY reflected as the assembly began to disperse. It's the reminder that scientific assumptions should always be questioned. Marcus's innocent curiosity opened possibilities we never imagined existed. Ambassador Velanara approached their group as attendees filed out. "The Council has approved funding for expanded human integration programs," she announced. "We want to ensure that human capabilities benefit all galactic species while respecting human autonomy and rights." "That sounds great," Marcus replied, "as long as we can still go home for family dinners." "Speaking of which," Dr. Chun interrupted, Your mother wants to know when you're coming home for summer vacation. She's very proud, but she misses you. The HFY's skin shifted to warm golden tones. Perhaps we could arrange for your family to visit the university. I would be honored to meet the people who raised such a remarkably curious student. As the historic assembly concluded, Marcus reflected on how a simple question about laboratory procedures had transformed his life and revolutionized galactic understanding. His casual observation had opened new frontiers for exploration, research, and cooperation between species. The galaxy would never again view humans as merely tolerated refugees from a dangerous world. They had earned their place as valuable partners whose unique capabilities could help solve problems and explore possibilities that no other species could approach safely. For the first time since joining the Galactic Council, humanity wasn't just accepted or feared. They were genuinely respected and valued for who they were. And perhaps most importantly, it had all started with one student's grandmother working in her laboratory on a typical Tuesday afternoon.